Welcome, everybody, to Beyond the Letter.
What's good, fam? It's been a long time.
We got Will Chung in the house. Pastor Will
I've
Chung.
been gone for over a month, I think.
Beloved church. He had pneumonia type 1, 2, 3, 4, flu, influenza A, B,
Dude,
C, D, X, Y,
Dog.
Z.
Oh, that was wild, bro. I was sick for probably 16 days-ish.
Okay. Mine was 8 days at the top of the year. Mine was on Christmas Eve. I had 104 fever, preaching all of our services. It was terrible.
Yeah, it was so funny because
it's the hardest day of my life.
I'm wearing the MJ, right?
Yeah,
I feel like millennials, whenever we think about the flu, we think about the flu game. So you're thinking like, don't be a little. You're like, be like MJ.
I know you don't know this because like, how would you? But at our Christmas Eve services, at all the services, I say, hey, just so you know, today's my Michael Jordan day.
You said
it's
that
my flu game. Yeah. Because I know for a lot of specifically men, they would make that connection. Because I said I have 104 fever doing Christmas Eve, and trust me, it was probably one of the top 3 hardest days of my life.
Yeah.
Doing a whole work. But here's for us, like what we did was 2 Christmas Eve services. But then we had a Christmas party for our staff kids where me and Ashley were telling our kids the Christmas story. We had cocoa, all these things. And so it was a full day that was just,
so what happened to me was, the doctors don't really know what happened because by the time I went to them, all my major symptoms were gone. Yeah. But I get sick on Sunday night and he's like, okay, but I'm still like, I have kids, I got church. But my wife was like, you need to rest. So Monday, Tuesday, I did the sick thing, try to recover. Wednesday, I woke up. It's like, okay, I'm getting better. Mm-hmm. So I was all right, we just got to get to work. Yeah. I worked all day. And around 3 p.m., just started sweating everywhere, cold sweats, and body started chilling. So it's like most likely the doctor said, because they gave me 2 antibiotics, I caught the common flu. And then 3 days into it, because I pushed my body too hard, I caught a secondary bacteria virus. So I had 2 viruses at the same time. Jeez. So they gave me like 2 different antibiotics. And so I was just, by like the 10th day, I was just pissed. I was like, yo, sure. I got him. I was like, and I had extreme fatigue. For all the major symptoms, like I had lung pain, throat pain, massive headache, felt weak, sweats. That went away in a week. But the fatigue, I couldn't do anything. So by like the 10th day, I was just pissed. I was just just frustrated, dog. Because I'd rather just be like dead. I'd rather be like, give me that 102 fever for 2 weeks. Yeah. So then I just know I got to rest. But it was like, so it went out for like 2 weeks.
One of my boys in our community, he had pretty much near that same flu, same thing, multiple viruses. And he lost 45 pounds in 30 days. And it was about a 30-day flu. And he looked emaciated, but it was just weakness. It was like at one point he's like, the flu thing kind of went away. Yeah. It was just the rest was just, he was just like, I just couldn't move, And I was like, dude, that's horrendous,
Yeah, dude, it was. And then I went straight to on-site. You know what on-site is? On-site works? I did on-site this past week.
Okay, that's the mental health thing.
It's a mental health
You've talked about
thing.
It on here.
Have I?
You did.
Maybe I have, but we did it. Yeah. It was.
You were talking about me and Dre are going to go on the vacation, but it's not really vacation. You didn't go much into it, but it's a
10-year anniversary gift to us. It cost a fortune.
Because you had to get approved for it, or
no? It's just. You apply. I think anyone could get in, but they're like waitlisted. Yeah. Carl Lentz did that right after his thing. Oh, okay. Laura did that. I know a lot of people have done that.
Wow.
It's one of the craziest.
It's 5 days or what?
It's 5 days, bro. You have to turn in your phone.
Oh, my gosh.
All your electronics. You leave it when you come in. No phone. No escape. It's 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. is breakfast. 8 to 8:15 is meditation.
Yeah.
8:30 to 9:30 is a lecture on trauma. 10 to 5 p.m. is therapy. 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. with the 1 hour break for lunch for 5 days.
So really you're just at mental boot camp.
It was one of the most life-changing experiences of our lives.
So what changed?
You just go in. You just go in, dog. you go into your trauma.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of life mapping? A lot of Christians do that, right?
Yeah.
It's like you do.
I've heard of it.
I think life mapping is like you have like a guy. Dave Gibbons does this at his Zealots program and stuff.
Okay.
I've done a lot of life mappings. Our guide had us do like a trauma mapping. So that was very unique and interesting. So
did you uncover stuff that you didn't know was there? You did. Okay.
A lot of stuff.
Okay.
A lot of stuff. You do a lot of work. And there's a lot of they do psycho.
And you have to do it with your spouse, or you could do it by yourself?
They have like dozens of different intensives.
You did a lot of stuff without Andrea?
No, we did the marriage intensive. So we did the
that's
marriage
like
intensive.
a track or what?
It's like so the morning session from 9 to 10. There was about 20 people there. We all do the same lecture, where the lecturer or the guide or the therapist, clinical therapist, will do a lecture on.
Are you guys all wearing like matching robes and stuff?
Nah. They did, and you know what I found out?
All wearing scrubs.
The funny thing is, they're not Christian.
Okay.
I didn't know
Yeah.
going into that they weren't a Christian organization.
You thought they were?
I thought they were. I know
Because you knew so many Christians
I know
did it.
so many pastors and Christians, and I know the founder's a believer. But you go, so like, there's all types of people, all types of walks of life.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like, what some would probably consider like New Age practices. So you have to be pretty comfortable in your faith and strong in your faith.
Yeah.
But 9 to 5, we do all the same lecture, and then you go into your own personal intensives. Some people have a individual intensive. Some people have a couples intensive. Some people have a group intensive. It was a lot.
This is an important question. What's the food like?
It was at the Oaks.
Oh,
It was
okay.
at the
So
Oaks.
not good.
No,
No,
but
I'm just kidding.
no, but they have their own.
You got to cater it.
Food was great.
Yeah.
Food was great.
So they cater it. They bring it in.
They have their own. Cooks like on
Oh,
site. They
yeah.
have their own food.
They come in and
they
they
have
do
their
everything.
own. Yeah, they hire like the best cooks. Food was great.
That's crazy. So you were familiar with every place because you and I met at the Oaks.
Yeah, we've been there so many years, bro.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so many times.
Yes, it was crazy, man.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a lot of inner work. Andrea and I, we've been going through some roadblocks this past year too.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to untangle some of our issues, but it just goes so much deeper.
So you think every single person should do this if they could financially do it?
For sure.
Really? Wow. Yeah.
It's to the point where I think every single person in the world should do it. That's how powerful it was for me. And they take a pride in experiential therapy.
Yeah.
So everything's experiential. They do like psychodrama. It's called psychodrama. Or
Yeah.
They have a whole bunch of different models that they use, and then they use the top, like the people there, the clinicians and the therapists. You could just tell they all have done their 50,000 hours of therapy, and they're just so
Really?
next level.
Yeah.
Next level. Yeah.
So coming out of it, not to bring like what you learned from it, but like what is it shaping for you going forward?
Oh, I'll share one thing. Do you know what internal family systems is? It's like a form of therapy. There's different like types of therapy, right?
I don't think so.
Well, internal family systems is that we're not a unitary person, but we're many parts, right? So the extreme dysfunctional version of that is multi-personality disorder.
Yeah.
People have that. But on a normal level, that all of us have parts in us. And our parts are all, I don't know this framework well, but it's like you have an angry part, you have a prideful part, right? You have like an inner child part, you have your protectors, defensive. Anyways, all that to say, the biggest exercise was a trauma mapping. So what we do is, one of the exercises we did, our guide had us 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, like 5 squares, right? And then it was until before we met. And we had the trauma map, the most traumatic events that we went through individually. And then we also, just the worst moments of our lives. And you had to draw it like in these little boxes, right?
You draw them.
You just draw it, and it's ugly, but it's like a different type of brain experience where
you're aware of your worst moments.
She just goes like, hey, take about 20 minutes, think about from 0 to 5, what was some of the hardest moments that you remember, And I'm like, I can't remember anything. All right, 5 to 10. What was some of the hardest moments you went through, or the most difficult things you went through? And then after we draw that, she had us do, what did you feel when that happened? What message did you receive when that happened? And how did you cope with that when that happened? So like we do that, and then you see it in the messaging you received and how you cope with it. And then afterwards, and you see your wife, Andrea's, and then she did this exercise where throughout our therapy, we had 6 chairs. So the middle chair is my adult self. The chair to my right was my inner child. And then the chair to my left was my protectors, my coping mechanisms. And you just work through that. It's like the inner child is your needs, right? What needs were neglected that formed your coping mechanisms and your protectors and your patterns and your personality. And your adult self is when you're able to regulate and you're able to have compassion on the needs you never received, which then developed coping mechanisms to either protect or force yourself to get it, and how that comes out in a dysfunctional way as an adult. There's just a bunch of stuff like that. And then they did it like a lot of psychodrama, like where I'm talking about something and my therapist will like, they have like 50 objects. You would have loved every lecture because everything is illustrations.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You know the movie Inside Out?
Yeah.
Inside Out is based on internal family systems.
Well, okay.
All those characters in there is what's
That's,
happening inside of you on a brain level, psychological level. And then I discovered I have my addiction, so I'm gonna do a 12 steps program now. After I'm entering into a 12 steps program. Just a bunch. It was like a lot of work, dog. Like,
yeah.
A lot of crying, a lot of weeping.
Really?
And I've done work.
Yeah, I know you have.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you've done. Yeah.
But this was like, it was crazy.
For your wife, was it just as equal? Like, would she put it at the same? So she would put it at the same level.
She's entering into a 12-step program too, for codependency, and then I'm joining a 12-step program for dysfunction, addiction and dysfunction.
Yeah.
And so I just learned a lot. I just learned, and I learned about I learned a lot. And so I got and I'm processing still, working through all that, dog.
Yeah, that's crazy. I don't,
It was crazy because a lot of my events was like violence. Like I got into so many street fights as a kid. And then the message I received, because there was like 6 sticky notes I wrote, is like, you're a little B. Stop being a little P. Stop being a little girl.
Yeah.
Those are the messages I received since I was in elementary school.
Yeah.
Another message is, you got to fight. You got to protect. And then my coping mechanism as a kid was like fist and violence. After I got saved, my coping mechanism was becoming the best. And then fight. And it's just this, you just see this, how that formed you. And that comes out with my wife.
Yeah.
And hers is like, I'm not important. I don't belong. Right? Those are the messages. And how she coped with it is, I got to appease everyone. Got to make sure my husband's okay. And then everyone. And so we just unpack. And then my therapist is so like seasoned. You're talking and she just busts like, it's like, I would say like talk therapy feels like conservative, evangelical reform therapy, because it's all cerebral. Experiential therapy feels like Pentecostal charismatic.
Yeah.
But she would like bring a prop and said, this is your father. What do you want to say to him? And you're like, what? It's like, what do you want to say to him? And just crazy stuff. It's like, if your father could talk to you right now, what would he say to you?
Yeah.
If he could go back and knew what you went through when you were 10, what would he say to you now? And you're just like, and then my wife is watching me.
Yeah, she's right there.
And she's like, oh, like this is where this all comes from.
But I feel like if like yours is like fight, not in that moment you'd feel like I'm weak if I show this in front of Andrea.
Of course.
But you just push past it, or
I mean, you're in a different space now, because there's fight, freeze, flight, fawn, right? And so I'm mostly fight, and she's mostly flight and fawn. And so it's just do a bunch of stuff, dog. Like automatic. So I just realized I'm like I'm really messed up too. So now I'm just gotta do the aftercare, and then we'll see.
So being a pastor, Rooster, go to bed. So being a pastor, has it What is it shaping in terms of potentially like is it shaping anything on like, because for you guys, you're like, your church is growing, you just got a new location, you're moving, you're going to finally do 2 services, and so like, do you feel like you have permission to accept what's happening with the church, and maybe it's coming from a different source, or are you feeling like, I feel like I might have to actually pump the brakes on some things, not moving to a new location or whatever, but anything else, like you ministry, career and calling wise, like, is this shaping anything for you?
I feel even more courageous. I feel more bold. I think I've expanded my internal resources to know how to deal with my internal battles in ways I didn't understand before. So like in the past, I dealt with my anger. I only had 2 avenues. Now I feel like I expanded my resources. I know how to deal with it in like 10 different ways. You know, my anxiety, I only knew how to deal with it 2 different ways, but now I feel like it's expanded my options and how to tend to my internal world.
Yeah.
So that's been interesting. Even like my wife and I remember there's one moment that was so helpful.
Yeah.
We talked about, Andrea and I have had some explosive fights this past several months. And it was simple. It was one thing was because when I would travel on trips, I already feel bad. Right? I already feel guilty.
Yeah.
I already feel bad that I'm going on this trip, but I know I have to do it. And so I used to ask her, hey, honey, when I go on these trips, could you just send me off with the blessing and like send me off not with like negative energy? Because I already feel bad when you do that. And but then that's like me telling her that you're responsible for how I feel. What I should say is like, it's okay that you feel discouraged, tired, and exhausted that I'm leaving, right? And then so Andrea used to just be like, well, I feel discouraged. But our therapist was like, well, let's pull back. There's multiple parts present in this moment. A part of you wants to support your husband, but another part of you is tired. And just say both parts. And so it's even simple tools like that. I was like, oh, that's so good. Because my thing is like, a part of me is excited about going to work. Yeah. But a part of me also feels bad. And so now I say, honey, a part of me feels guilty, but a part of me also is really happy to go out and like to do this new opportunity. And so the part of me that feels guilty, what do I need to self-regulate to make sure I don't feel shame that I'm a bad husband? And so and then we dealt with where that stems from. Yeah. Where that stems from. You know? Yeah. Because there's what you feel, and there's what you believe about yourself. Yeah. And then there's how you coped with that. Yeah. And how that's become self-hazardous. Yeah. And detrimental to key relationships. Yeah. And so now with church and work, I actually feel a lot like
giving yourself more permission in certain areas while also accepting maybe the pressure or the guilt or whatever else that may be.
I think I'm just more aware of what's happening inside of me as I'm leading. And so I'm able to like U-turn back to what I need and then return back to what I got to do. Yeah. On a more, and I was already pretty decent at that, I thought, but I don't even know if this is making any sense, dog. It's my first, I haven't talked about it since I've been back. I've been back for 4 days.
How long ago was this?
This was from Thursday to Monday.
Oh, it just happened?
Yeah, I just got back Monday.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, so you had,
but let me tell you something crazy. This is the funny part, dog. So you got to turn your phone in, right? Yeah. I have no dopamine now. I can't work. Yeah. Can't watch TV. Can't check my phone. There's nothing. So you know what happened, Doc? I went to sleep at 7:30. 2 nights in a row. Yeah. I just had to escape. Yeah. I was like, I was gonna sleep. Yeah. So the third day, my wife was like, "You're not sleeping at 7:30 no more." Yeah. And man, I couldn't stop eating. Really? I couldn't stop eating. Because I usually don't eat breakfast. Yeah. And I usually eat a decent lunch and a big dinner. I couldn't stop eating because there was no escape. There's nothing else to do. Yeah. And so like it was a fascinating experience. And then they do that on purpose. So like you detox your dopamine hits and you
are you isolated from other people, or you're engaging with other
you
people?
could if you want, but I didn't
Okay.
want to.
Right.
Yeah.
So you didn't talk to anyone other than your wife?
I did. I was polite. You know,
Yeah.
lunch, we were
Yeah.
all together at lunch. So, you know, I had good conversations, hear each other's stories. You're not allowed to disclose what you do for a profession.
Oh, nice.
So you connect
Yeah.
on more like a human level. Like,
Yeah.
what was your story? How's your family? What's your dreams? Da, 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 da. And then, but after dinner, I'm like, I'm not trying to make best friends, you know?
Yeah,
And
right.
so I started playing pickleball. The last 3
Yeah,
nights,
'cause
I
they
was
have
like,
that
yo,
court right there. Yeah.
honey, let's go play pickleball.
Yeah. There's nothing to do.
Yeah, and they do like ice cold. They do
Cold plunge.
plunges at nights as experiments.
Yeah.
They do a lot of stuff, bro.
So what's the I'm getting cold plunge at the house. So
Yeah,
what's their thing with cold plunge?
It's just so good for
What's
you,
their
man.
version?
They just do things to get you out your
Yeah.
normal system or normal rhythms to explore new things. And cold plunge is just so good for you.
Yeah.
You know, in that mental health place.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do it. I just was watching people and I was like, y'all go ahead. I'm cool.
You're gonna do it. You're gonna do it at my house when we get it installed.
That could be fun with the homies.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Yeah, man. You just have a lot more compassion on yourself.
Did any of it, like you highly educated, you went to seminary, all that stuff like that? Does any of this stretch your theology, or did it all just really just fall in line with like who Jesus is to you? And obviously, you discover they're not Christian, but the truths of anything that's good for us or truthful for us. I mean, obviously, it's
Yeah.
originated with God's principles and God's laws. So,
You know,
is this stuff? Was this clarifying even in your own like theology and relationship with God and things like that?
Well, you know, we talk about common grace, right? In the
Yeah.
reform world versus
Yeah.
special grace. Or what was it? Common grace and, right? Was it special? What was the phrase they used to use? Common grace versus
I think it's special.
special grace,
Yeah,
right? The
yeah,
common grace
yeah,
is like,
yeah. That's
God-
what everyone can have.
yeah,
you know,
God,
yeah.
God, the rain,
Yeah.
restaurants, food, business.
Yeah,
Every
special
Christian
grace.
and non-Christian has the same grace. Special grace is the unique grace where the Holy Spirit illuminates their eyes to see the word.
It's a gift of salvation.
Yeah, I
and
would
all
say
that. Yeah.
in the context of common grace, they are the best therapists in the world. They are the best at what they do. So I got to, it's almost like if you go, I'm sure you and I could go to a Harvard business class and we would leave there like that was the best leadership experience and MBA experience you could have got. It's not Christian.
Right.
And we
right.
can learn from that. So when it
Yeah,
comes,
you can learn wealth from someone that's not a Christian, but to take kingdom principles with wealth,
Yeah,
now you're living
yeah.
you're
sure.
living in a higher.
there were things that
realm,
they did
you know?
that definitely it stretches it could make your faith uncomfortable if you're not strong in your faith.
Yeah.
But there was nothing there that they did that made me feel uncomfortable. And you know me, I'm more progressive in certain areas where I'm like kind of open-minded and open-hearted to experience. They did like interesting meditations. You know, some may call it more like New Age, but I thought this was great. But everything is for them is also backed by science.
Yeah.
Neurology.
They're doing science, and you're capitulating your faith with what.
Yeah, there was. I'll tell you one thing
doing
that we
right.
did during a
Yeah.
meditation that I thought my old self would be like, "Nah, you ain't doing this." But
Yeah.
like, you know, it was a breathing exercise, right?
Okay. Yeah.
We all do that.
Yeah.
Right. I believe even in like the ancient spiritual practices, silence and stillness, there's a lot of breathing that's involved. But there was one part where they lead you through a breathing exercise, and they start with simple breathing through your nose and then breathing through your nose and mouth, and then they're like, now we're gonna sigh as we breathe out. So, that's what the guide is doing. And then at first, everyone was supposed to do it, and then when everyone did it, I just couldn't stop crying.
Really?
Because you just felt all your burdens like,
Yeah. Yeah.
on. And they did another thing. It's called de-rolling, where it's like we do a lot of exercises where we do props and you act. So hey, we need like 5 volunteers. So let's say Adam, you're sitting there, and they're like, can someone be Adam's automatic nervous system? So let's say someone named Tim comes and. Now you are Adam's automatic nervous system. Okay, can someone else be Adam's protectors? And they come and you are his protector. Can someone be Adam's executive function? So and they do like skits, live skits. And then after they ended, they're like, now we're gonna de-roll, and you're gonna repeat after me. Say, I am no longer Adam's automatic nervous system. I am now Tim again. So I was like, why are you guys doing that? Like that's so over the top.
Yeah.
But at the way end, there was a moment where. When they do a whole like closure, your therapist, they have they do like a closing, I don't know, it was like a ritual, whatever, where they say your therapist is now going to de-roll out of their role as your therapist. And now they're just going to be your peer, right? They do this thing. And so after this, you can no longer contact them. After this, HIPAA laws, if they ever see you in public, they're going to ignore you because unless you engage them first. And so they do this thing where like now they de-roll. I just started crying because I never de-rolled out of being a pastor. I never de-rolled into just being Will. Mm-hmm. Who the hell is Will?
Yeah.
And I started thinking that would have been great if I could de-roll out of being a pastor and F you, dog. I'm a human being now, right?
Here's how you made me feel.
Yeah, so that's not a Christian thing per se, but like those moments were powerful for me where it's like they have these exercises where my therapist, and I remember right after that, I don't know if this played into it, but like my therapist, she was on, right? She was with us 8 hours a day, walking with us, making it about us, never bringing in herself. Right after she de-rolled, she was no longer our therapist, and now she's just who she is. As we're walking out, she just starts talking to us. She starts crying, talking about her stuff. And I was like, damn. Like those simple things, these simple little rituals, simple little shifts, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You ever hear that American Idol guy that went viral? He was singing a song about his dad, how his dad died. He's like, I think he's a Samoan kid.
Yes.
Says, you're no longer my daddy.
Yeah.
We're now just two grown men.
Yeah.
You saw that song?
Yes,
and people were like,
I have.
bawling.
Yeah.
So it was like moments like that throughout therapy. They're helping you like get in touch with your humanity. And my therapist wasn't even a believer. Wasn't even a Christian.
Really? Mm-hmm. You found that out at some point, or
I found out
just
right when we started? I could just tell.
Oh, okay, right.
And right when we started, just dropping F-bombs, like immediately first conversation. Oh, I'm cool with that. I cuss too.
Yeah.
But it was like I could just tell. But she was just so good at what she does.
Yeah. Now, do they invite you like, hey, if any of my language or anything?
Of course. She was like,
if this doesn't make you
okay
feel
with
comfortable,
you? I was like, no, this is great.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. One of the things, my wife grew up in the church, so when she has a hard time with curse words. For me, I didn't. So I used to tell my wife, like, honey, when I cuss, I'm not cussing to say bad words. These words just really articulate what I'm feeling the best.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so Andrea like, okay.
Well, and I've heard, obviously everybody has their own different view on because we call them curse words, but then they're cuss words, and then there's real curses, and then I feel like we just put them all in a smoothie and we blend. Yeah. But so you grew up in a Christian household, and it's like frick, and it's like that's an okay replacement, but it's really not. It means it's the same word. It's just the one that you allow. It's
just spelled differently.
Yeah, but it's the same exact expression or desire. But I think what was interesting one time that I never really had thought about it before, but I was talking to a very high-ranking like sheriff one time, and he was telling me like, man, I hate cussing. Like when I'm at home, I don't cuss at all. Like it just makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm a believer. And he goes, but when we go out, like if you think about it and you're like a teenager or a young adult or a young man or whatever, and you grew up and all these words are expressed every single day. And I come up and I say, sir, would you please get out of your vehicle? Like he's like, it doesn't compute in their head. It's not even that vocabulary isn't even a vocabulary that goes in their head, right? So he said, we have to use curse words because it immediately, tangibly, to them, when that word is used, it matches an emotion, it matches an expression. So, and you'll see it sometimes, like when like the police cam footage, they're like, get the F out of your vehicle and blah, blah, and you're like, dang, can they do that any nicer? And his view is, actually, no, we can't, because if their mom or dad came up to them, they would say that same exact thing. That would be the same exact phrase. And they're like, well, you could be nicer. And it's not a matter of politeness. It's more a matter of like what gets the individual to respond. What is the language that they understand best? And for people that grew up in the streets or kind of on a rougher side of the track, like that verbiage is more so a language and less of a cursing. You go somewhere else, like, oh, that's a curse word. In their background, that's just That's hey, get the heck out of my seat. That's just them. They would never say it without those phrases. And when he said that, I didn't have opinion on it. It was just wow, I've never really, but then that did take me back to like my years when I was a youth pastor. Cause I used to have to do, when I was a youth pastor, I'd have kids that were, in gangs and this and that. And, I'd ask the parent to leave and I, say, you want to fight someone? Fight me right now. No, you're my pastor. I am, but you're okay with fighting that. And you get in their face. And that would break them,
I've done that too as a youth pastor.
Yeah, but that would break them.
You think you a gangster?
Yeah, they wouldn't be like, let's go hand to hand.
But they respect it. Yeah. They feel love.
And if they did, for some reason, one of my ears just went out on one side. That was strange. Did it for you?
No, mine's
cut out on my side. Having some technical glitches today, but that's okay. That's all right. Yes. Oh, there it was you. You kicked it.
I think I did, dog.
I was like, but it was you match really, quickly when you're a youth pastor.
Yeah.
If you could be aware of, circumstance, like, okay, I'm going to match their energy to hopefully take them somewhere, sure. Match them somewhere. So even if we were, counseling a younger teenage girl or something, it's like, okay, right now I actually be very empathetic. I mean, if I raise my voice, she either A, has never had a man in her life who this is going to scare her, or her dad does this. And so it's like, there's some things that lead towards response and there's other things that lead towards like shutting a person down and identifying those things. But then when you really think about it, you're like, well, but I also do that. Like you're telling your wife, like, it's I also do certain things at home that would be either rejections of what I didn't like growing up or responses to what only got me to respond, growing up, which...
one of the things our guide, we called her a therapist, but guys, she said is whatever is hysterical is historical. So like if any reaction you have is hysterical, it's always historical. And so like, response is a healthy adult, a healthy, Christian responds to the appropriate experience of what's happening in the moment. Right?
Yeah.
So if my wife says something that bothers me, a healthy, appropriate response is just to like, hey, that wasn't cool, and you just talk about it. But if she does something and I have a hysterical response, that's historical. You're not hearing what she said. You're
drawing from something else.
You're hearing everything that's ever been said to you from the past. And so she was saying, what's hysterical? You better. That thing, you don't deal with that. Yeah, it's gonna destroy you. So it's just like even like the language, how you talk, how you respond, all that stuff, and that's even the people on the streets. That's historical. That's
for
abuse.
Sure.
That's trauma.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And so like
that's like that. You've seen that guy go viral a lot. He's named Aaron the Plumber. He's a black buff guy.
I haven't seen. Maybe I haven't.
But it's like, well, you haven't been on social media for a week. But no, he's gone viral the past month or so. But
more recently?
He's those like balloon popping games where they like date and if there's like a red flag, they pop the balloon. You've seen those? It's like very viral. It's very popular. But there's one guy in particular that like. Now they have him on like reality shows and stuff, and he will fight on any drop of a dime, any drop of a dime. You could be like, I don't like your shoes, and legitimately on the show he's taking his shirt off, and he's fist fight, like no warning, and so there's just a compilation of this guy that's fight, and really
legit. He's not acting.
No.
People are using him.
Yes, they're using it as a meme. But
he's being real.
He's real.
Yeah, he has
massive
trauma.
A lot of trauma, right? And it's like. And some people are making it, most people you're just laughing. You're making because it's entertaining to see someone, that quickly get beside their emotions. But at the end of the side, like obviously me as a pastor, I just go like, man, this dude has to be so broken. And I grew up with a lot of teenagers. Not grew up. I pastored a lot of teenagers that was them. This guy does it because he has, he's got like a 12-pack and he's extremely buff. So there's an intimidation where he feels like he could do it. But sometimes he loses the fights because they record him and stuff. But it's like I grew up, pastoring a lot of young men that were that way. And it's just like, it breaks your heart to think that it is so easy to break you. That's heartbreaking. That it just takes a matter of just saying, hey, you're whack. And there he is. Like literally some people would just be like, he said something and the person's like, yeah, you're lying. That's not true. I'm lying. And he takes his shirt off. He jumps at the guy and starts fighting. And you're just like, Dang, man.
Yeah, there was one of the things we talked about. There's a phrase they use. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. Mm-hmm. Right. So for a guy like that, all someone was saying was like, "Hey, that was rude." Right.
Yeah.
So that's how it was. You just didn't rude, but how he saw it was you're attacking me because I've been attacked.
And I have to defend myself.
I have to defend myself. So the way you respond and act is not oftentimes how things actually are, but it's how you are and how you interpret it. Right. So people in the hood, like, I remember like when I grew up in that wannabe gangster street life, and if someone was staring at me, immediately, they beefing.
Yeah.
We're throwing down. But that's how I am. But they were literally just looking at me. You know what I'm saying? But if you come from that life, or if someone like steps on your shoe, it's like, nah, we don't step
for sure.
You know what I mean? So it's you see things as you are, not as things actually are.
Yeah.
And that bleeds into everything. So like, and so that dude you're talking about, brother needs help.
It's tough. Oh, well, yeah, for sure. Someone needs to sponsor an on-site for him. But he probably wouldn't be on TV no more. And he's feeding into it more.
Here's a side note, and I don't know if it's I could be reading into this, but On-Site has something called the On-Site Foundation.
Okay.
Where it's the foundation start, where they sponsor people with different traumas. So if you go to that particular website, it says to like serve the marginalized, the poor, the underserved, and they have like certain occupations, right? They have free on-sites for like veterans. They have free on-site for like underserved communities with like gun violence, right? And another free one they have is pastors.
No.
Because I think it's because they equate the job of a pastor is that traumatic. No, it's that traumatic.
Exactly.
You're that helpless.
Yeah.
You're that, you can't fight back.
Yeah.
You can't defend yourself. You're under-resourced financially as well. So that I saw that, I was like, damn, I had more like empathy and compassion on my pastor friends, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like, you got to be everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I saw that. I was like, wow, they see a pastor's job as that vulnerable and traumatic that they want to sponsor their entire intensive.
That's crazy. So you didn't even apply for that. Someone else sponsored you, but it's people, if you're people
I didn't even know that
pastors
existed. I did the marriage intensive.
Yeah.
We saved money. Yeah. We paid a lot of money for that.
Yeah.
The pastor's program is $8,000 for one pastor, but it's free. They have a free program for that.
Yeah.
So I only knew that because my guy, they give you an aftercare like recommendations. Mine was a 12-step program, and then she also recommended, can you do the pastor's intensive? I was like, what's that? She said, On-Site offers a week intensive for free for pastors that costs $8,000, but the foundation covers it. I was like, what?
Wait, hold on.
I would have just done that. I would have paid.
I mean, my wife can fix herself.
I could have went to one, and she could have went to one.
And I could have just, we're both pastors. Yeah.
But then that's how, like, intense.
Well, there was and we know, we're pastors, so we know, but I was at a thing last week, and there was a businessman there, and he goes, my wife, dad was a pastor. No, his brother-in-law. He said my brother-in-law was a pastor, and he said unfortunately he didn't survive being a pastor. Almost talked like he had died or something like that. He said unfortunately he didn't, and so he's no longer a pastor. And he said, before I married someone who's now a family member was a pastor, he goes, I thought it was a relatively simple and easy job. Yeah. He goes, and then I married someone whose brother was a pastor, and then he started, he's telling us, but he's like, at 9 a.m., you're reviewing the budget, for the church. By 10 a.m., you're counseling a couple that's on the verge of divorce. Yeah. He's like, at 11 a.m.
that husband cussed you out for reading them wrong.
Exactly. He's like, 11 a.m., you're preparing your sermon for the weekend. For sure. At 12 a.m., you're talking to a group of teenagers about how great Jesus is, while your whole morning was you were questioning God on half of everything that you were going through. Yep. And he goes, at 1 p.m., you're meeting with a pissed off member who didn't like that you changed the paint in the building. And and he continued, and he was like, by 2 p.m., you're actually doing a funeral for a 16-year-old who had cancer. And then at evening, you're checking in on the choir rehearsal. That making sure that next weekend the kids choir is going to do. And he goes, no wonder these guys don't make it.
And then you forget to add in at 4 p.m. I had to go to my kid's soccer game.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have your whole personal life on top of that, where to yourself you're never enough. You know, you're never.
I was thinking, this. I don't know why I thought of this, but I remember during 2020 when all the Black Lives Matter and police brutality, there was a viral clip of a guy who was at this hearing, and I just remember he goes like, in the hood, if someone has a gun, I'm not scared because I could shoot back, I could fight back.
Oh yeah.
But when a police officer has a gun, I can't do nothing because I'm helpless. Because if I fight back, I'm dead. And he was going off about like just the dynamics of what that's like. And I just thought about that right now because I remembered, at least for me, because when I went through all my trauma in high school, I always fought back. We just throw down, right? But when I became a pastor and a Christian, I put all that behind me. But that's still a part of how I grew up. Right? Yeah. That's still my fight mode. But now I still remember there was one time when I was a youth pastor, I left. I was transitioning to a new role. And so I remember I grabbed all the volunteer leaders, and there's a senior in high school who became I was his youth pastor, and now he was volunteering with me as a college leader for the youth. And I remember I grabbed all of them, and I was like, hey, guys, I need to tell you guys something. It's a heartbreaking news, but Andrea and I are transitioning out this role because we just sense God's calling us to be full-time missionaries, and we're moving to Mexico. And, tears are coming down. I'm crying. People are crying. And afterwards, I leave because I see two of the leaders like breaking down crying. And they were both my youth kids before, but now they're volunteers with me. And I went to one of the guys. Are you okay? He looks at me. He's like, just when I thought you were going to stay, you're leaving too. Right? That's what he says. Like, and he's bawling. And so I have an option there to either defend myself or, let him grieve. Because he's transferred some trauma onto me, father figure and all that. And listening, and like, I still remember that day clear as day. I'm listening, letting him, and he's just breaking down, and I'm just like, hey, man, I'm sorry. But like, I can't defend myself in any way, shape, or form in that moment. I go into my car, I went mute. I couldn't talk for like over 2 hours. I don't know what happened psychologically. I started crying, and I felt like a little kid. And I literally couldn't talk. And my wife was like, I could only whisper because I think something traumatically happened. Because I can't be like, man, F you, dog.
Yeah. I ain't your daddy. I didn't sign up to be your daddy. You're right. Yeah,
I got to fulfill my calling too. But
right.
Right, because as pastors, you can't.
Well, I mean, the moment you fight back, you're not fit for that role anymore.
So like, I just remember like, I can't even defend myself. The moment I took this job, but now I'm healthier. I'm an adult. I've learned how to disassociate. I love how to self-regulate. Yeah. I've learned, but I was a 21-year-old youth pastor.
For sure.
I don't know what the frick I'm doing. Yeah. But all it's PTSD, trauma, all that stuff. That's stored in my body now. So now I just don't let you get close.
Yeah. You're right. Now, it's like, hey, I'll never be told that again.
Yeah. Now, even if you do say that, it's not going to hurt me no more.
There's so much distance. It's like, that can't be true.
Yeah, you might be close to me, but I'm not close to you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I learned how to. So all of that is just piled up. So it's like just working on that stuff, And like being a pastor, I heard Glenn Packham say back in the 80s, pastors, we just needed to be a theologian.
Yeah.
Early 2000s, we had to be like executive leaders.
Yeah.
Right? And then that was about it. Now it's like you need to be a social activist. You need to be a politician. Yeah. You need to be trauma informed. Yeah. You have to be a theologian. You have to be a social media influencer. You have to be a father.
Yeah. A sociologist. You gotta know culture, ethnicity, demographic.
And we're for it. We signed up for it.
It's fine.
We just gotta remember, like, hey, we probably more effed up than we realize because of that.
Well, yeah, it's a lot. If you carry it and you think that you actually are in charge of this thing, it has a lot to do with you, which to me, my view is it doesn't have a lot to do with me. I'm a vehicle in which God's purpose plan is going to be done with or without me. Sure. He gives me an opportunity to participate, and so. When I fall short or when I fail, it's, again, my successes are not mine. I'm proud that God used me. I'm aware of it, but my successes are not mine and my failures are my responsibility, but they're also something that I'm not hold myself accountable to in that sense, which is where, confession and everything else comes in. So, that's, it's fascinating because hearing you talk about it, like it doesn't necessarily, it sounds incredibly healing and it sounds incredibly purposeful. It just doesn't, oddly enough, like, and I'd be interested in what your thoughts about it, like it doesn't personally appeal to me. Like I don't, I don't hear that and go, I think a lot of people hear it and they go, I really would love that. And I think I could benefit from anything, but I don't hear that and go like, oh, I really think that would solve some things
Me too.
I'm trying to working through.
I didn't want to go on site.
Yeah.
My wife wanted me to do it.
Yes. I don't want to speak for Ashley, but I'll have her listen. I don't think she would think that I could benefit from anything. I'm not saying I'm perfect.
You're
have a lot of,
you just say you're not. It's not something you're like, I need that.
And I don't think my wife would be like, yeah, you would. I have issue. I have ADHD. I have potential spectrum, like where I'm going to get tested for it. So definitely diagnosed ADHD. Potential. One of the episodes you weren't here for, me and Sammy talked. He put me on the Amen Clinic's brain scanning that helps you. You get therapy with it, but they do it. They do it to heal your brain. Yeah. And I told Sammy, Will actually brought that up. So I'm looking into that because what I more so am trying to do is work through brain things that affect my every single day. That at least I'm not aware that it maybe is trauma induced. It just seems to be. I don't know the connection to ADHD and some type of spectrum thing
because I have ADHD. Because ADHD, people with ADHD have lower levels of dopamine. Yeah. That's why we're always
right.
So our brain has been rewired to have lower levels of dopamine. So we always.
And you're always looking for the next hit.
Yeah. So a lot of people with ADHD have addictions. But they don't. A lot of people with ADHD don't have substance addictions. They have what's called process addictions. So they love the process of highs that come from doing things, working out, social media, constantly producing, because your brain literally has too low levels of dopamine and you need to hit it. And then on a psychological level, they'll say ADHD is a way to cover pain. You can't sit with boredom is too painful, because if you sit bored long enough, you will literally physiologically feel pain, which is oftentimes attached to emotional trauma. Yeah. And it's just a way you've learned how to numb. But me too. When I was like Andrea, I was like, honey, on site, that'd be great. And I kept telling her, like, you know who goes there, right? It's like people are about to get divorced. I'm like, we good. Like, and then I remember like 2 days before, I was like, no phone for 5 days. What am I gonna do? And so I know I get it. Me too. So I went there not thinking I needed it. Yeah. But when I got there.
What was it, like day 2? You were like, oh, this is great. Or was it day 1? You were like, I think this is going to be really good.
Day 3.
Day 3.
Day 1, it was good. It was cool. Some weird people here. I'm sure I'm just as weird as they are to them. Yeah. The lecture was good. It's good. It's good. And then by day 3, I'm like, oh my God. There are just some patterns that I've had. Yeah. That I've always tried to fix. But I've learned I don't need to fix it. I need to heal from it. And I've identified where it comes from. And there's just certain things that I've done to my kids. There's a whole bunch, dude. We came back, we changed everything. Really? Because you can't help but think about your kids the whole time you're there. Yeah, yeah. So we're working on stuff, and like, you just can't help but think about your kids. So a lot of times they're like, hey guys, we're gonna do an exercise. Please don't think about your children, because this is for you. Yeah. But you just can't help it. Yeah. You just think about like, oh, yeah, fudge. You know what I mean? And so.
For sure, I think I know
as a
that
friend,
would probably...
As a friend, I think you would. I think if you felt safe once you get there...
Yeah, that would be big
and all your armor came down...
Yeah.
It's almost like when Julian prophesied over you.
Yeah, right? That's what I was going to put.
You're fine. You're good. But once the word came... There you are, just crying.
Once you start talking about my boys.
There you are crying.
Well, that's what I want. Once you said that right now, it was, and I'm sure, I mean, I hope every parent who has a heart, talking about your kids would draw you to tears. But I know I'm not perfect, and I know I'm not emotionally perfect in any way. But yeah, right now when you said that, like there are moments that well, all the time you're going to think about your kids a lot. That's because that time at the Oaks, so that would probably bring a lot of remembrance if for some reason I went to something at the same place but when Julian prayed over me, and I was fine. I was fine. He was prophesying over me for 20 minutes. And, I just received it, and it was a lot of like, that's on point. That's on point. That's a good word. And then he said, do not fear your boys. They're going to be okay. Ministry is not going to take them out. And I was like, oh, this baby, Yeah,
so
and I hadn't cried since 2020.
Yeah. So what they would say, if I wasn't on site, they'll say, hey, why did you cry about that?
Yeah.
And you'll start sharing. They'll be like, okay, let's go a little deeper.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you're swimming in your childhood.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'm aware of all that. I could talk that through pretty easy. I mean, I've talked it here on the podcast. A lot of my dad sacrificing time and energy with the kids for the sake of ministry. And so, but again, like, I'm sure, anything that's part of God's common grace is beneficial to you. Mm-hmm. I think there's a difference from what's beneficial to you and what appeals to you. Right. So going back, it's like, it doesn't appeal to me, but I'm sure it would be beneficial.
Tell you what, I totally forget. You know what they make you do?
What?
Horse therapy.
Like pet horses? Or
I didn't even know we don't even know what's gonna happen. They wake up like, hey, I forget what there's an actual phrase.
Yeah.
Something therapy, but they take us down to like horses.
Okay.
And you got to connect with horses.
They do that with kids with autism.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's no
we have a member of our church who does horse therapy for kids with autism.
Yeah, so we did that too.
Like kids with autism can get like a wild stallion to calm down that no other human could.
Yeah. The reason why I laugh is I just thought about you doing that.
People were probably paying for a reality show of me going,
I can see you going, Ash, wait, we
I ain't touching that horse.
So for me, and the whole experience is that there's a book called...
Did you pass your trauma to the horse?
No, dude, it was so funny. It wasn't that powerful for me, but it was funny and insightful because you go down and there's 4 horses, right?
Yeah.
So one of the, and then you're supposed to emotionally connect with the horse, while collaborating with your partner.
Okay.
So it brings to surface how you do things collaboratively that's unfamiliar territory.
Okay.
Right. So immediately I'm just like, I'm cool. I'm not doing this. And Andrea's, I want to do it. I'm like, well, I'll support you in doing it.
Yeah.
But she doesn't want me to support her in doing it.
She wants you to do it.
She wants me to do it.
Yeah.
But for me, if I don't want to do something, it's really hard for me to get it. So it's stuff like that. But then at one point, the horse squares up on me. Like it goes like, and it starts looking like this. I just start backing up. I go like, we good.
Yeah.
I'm chill like this, right? Andrea draws in and says, oh my gosh, the horse wants to connect. I thought the horse is like, you better get out my personal space.
I'm about to step on you.
So that's the whole idea. You see things not as they are, but as you are.
Yeah.
And then the horse, the therapist, the horse, whatever, like, you know what that means?
It's a horse therapist?
Yeah, they're trained to
interpret
use their horses
the horse.
to do therapy for you.
I actually have a member who literally does that.
Maybe your member was at the Oak stuff. But I was like...
No, they probably weren't, but I'm just saying
they literally was like, what do you think the horse is doing? I was like, oh, the horse is squaring up. To me, I'm like, the horse is said, get out my space. She's like, no, actually, the horse wants to connect with you. I'm like, what? Are you serious? But the funny thing is, I said, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
They're like, why don't you believe me? I was like, why would I? My instincts are telling me, get out this horse's face.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I'm telling you as a professional, the horse wants to connect with you right now, but it could feel your anxiety. They did all this stuff. I'm just laughing because I'm thinking about you. There was another couple that I could see you being like, hey, we going home.
Pack your bags. Hey, I put my head to this horse. Exactly.
It was funny, dog. They do. And then at the way end, right, after the whole thing, they're like, now you need to make the horse move without touching it.
You seen that preacher on YouTube who does it?
No.
Bro, you're in the horse world. So now you sparked my interest.
I'm not in this horse world. I'm not.
Now you sparked my interest because we were talking about horses, which I know nothing of. But there's a preacher, there's a guy on YouTube. We actually try to book them, but they actually get booked really in advance. What they do is they'll come to your church and they make a stable on your platform or somewhere on your stage. And then they go and capture a wild horse. And you hear them boom, he kick in, he's moving, and they pull him out, and he's unwranglable. So multiple people bring the wild stallion in, and he'll teach you how to get the horse to surrender to follow you. And he talks about like, this is you outside of Christ, and as God tries to chase you and chase you and chase you, the only way is to surrender. And he teaches, but it's all the psychotherapy stuff. But then he preaches it, and then eventually the horse is like kicking at the gate, and it's on YouTube. He kicks at the gate. He's this and this, and then by the end, he's taking him in a circle, and then he's walking with him, and then he rides him, and then this is what God's trying to do with you.
That was a weird one, dog. I was like, all right, whatever. Let's go.
That's probably the only one that I would go, yeah, it seems real, because I know it works I've researched, that's where the ADHD, I've researched kids with autism. I've seen the preacher do this. So I'd be like, this is actually probably one of the ones I believe. Don't hold a doll and tell me it's my dad. Take me to the horse again and tell me it's like Avatar, and that I could probably make sense of.
It's wild, but it's wild stuff.
Which is strange how everybody sees the world.
Everyone,
because you're like, that one was weird, but that would actually be one of the days that I'd be like, this makes complete sense.
Yeah, but you've done your research. So one of the things I said, they were like, they asked me, what would it make you feel safe to connect with the horse? I was like, give me 30 minutes. Let me get my phone. Let me do some research. And once I do my own research, I will believe what you're saying, and I can reconnect. They're like, is that how you live your life? I was like, yeah. Like before I meet somebody, I do research on them. I talk to a few homies. It's just the way I got to, you know what I mean? I think that's what you're supposed to do. They're like, no, not everyone does that, because most people aren't traumatized like you are.
Yeah, you're a skeptic. yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Some people just trust people. I'm like, you can't trust people.
What do you mean trust?
You got to at least call 2 to 3 people to check, like, hey, is this full of dope?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you trust.
Then y'all open up.
Yeah, I'm like, you've ever read the book 48 Laws of Power? I'm like, you got to do that before you. They're like, yeah, whoever wrote that was probably a traumatized young man. Whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, though, that
I refuse that.
Yeah. So
that's crazy, man. Yeah, that's incredible though. I get it. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, you do enough pastoral counseling. That the Word of God is sufficient. What is it? Nouthetic counseling. That's only Bible-based counseling. I mean, I'm not a full proponent on nouthetic counseling. That just understanding Scripture is what places you as more of a charismatic Christian. I understand that moves of the Spirit, because believe it or not, you said, okay, when you breathe and you breathe out, they want you to well, there are streams of charismatic that, not in the weird way, but where we do something in our church called Forward, which is it'd be our version of deliverance ministry, and so a lot of it is reflection on trauma and past, and part of it is counseling informed with biblical and spiritual. The last day ends with a worship night where people are crying and falling out, and one of them is coughing. Is that if you feel a cough, the theory is cough, because that's either in the Christian perspective, we say that's demonic oppression, that's spiritual abuse or trauma, that is a stronghold, that is bringing you to a place, vomiting for sure. And so which I know you're not. You said at first it was strange, but it makes sense too. But other people would say, well, that's odd. I don't know that I'd want to be in a place that wanted me to. What did they want you to? They wanted you to. What did they
make
want
you
to?
Sigh.
Sigh.
They literally go like, repeat it, and then everyone was like, and you're like, what the? And then eventually
you said you
like,
started crying.
Tears are coming out.
Which, like, to one stream of a Christian would be like, that's actually strange. It would be strange to me personally, not to do it, but just in the sense of, I don't like doing anything with anybody.
For sure.
And so would alone, I don't want to take me into a private room and I'll do this with, not because of embarrassment, but just, I was like, I don't know. I don't, And so, but I would be like, oh, the theory I agree with. I've seen enough, I've done enough pastoral counseling in more of charismatic streams that I know vomiting happens. I know coughing happens. I know, dry heaving happens when somebody is being delivered. And, I believe to a degree, deliverance can happen in God's common grace. We know true deliverance, freedom, and salvation happens through Jesus' special grace. But that common grace that almost anyone could be healed of trauma, in God's natural order. But it's like, some stuff would seem strange, but which to me, I'd be in there and I'd be like, no, this makes sense. Other things would be like,
well, I think because you and I are so, I feel like our diet is very vast.
Yeah.
Right. You and I have a very, that's why we run the same frequency. We like leadership, management, organizational stuff. We love theology, reform stuff, but we are charismatic, we're Pentecostal. So I would say, like, if you're a charismatic Christian, a lot of it was, oh yeah, I understand this. But if you're like
a to the book Christian, like you need a verse for everything you do, you'd be very uncomfortable.
Because my guide said a part of that breathing exercise, when you do it, and then by the end they actually go like, and they make you yell on top of your lungs. It like progresses and progresses and progresses. And the yelling part is like, they say trauma gets stuck, right? Somatic trauma gets stuck in your body on a cellular level, right? That's why people get stress, literally can cause heart disease, high blood pressure, and cancer, because trauma, emotion. So they say when you do something somatic, like yelling, it helps it come out. So they do all these embodied. So you do, starts that, and then by the end, the guy's like, okay, breathe in, yell out all the pain that's stored in your body. And the people are all like,
yeah.
And that people could, the Korean tradition has that in our faith.
Yeah, yeah.
We yell Jesus 3 times. I don't know, do you know that? Mm-mm. Every Korean church yells Jesus 3 times on the top of their lungs before they pray. It's a part of our prayer culture. The pastor says 1, 2, 3, and literally everyone in the church says, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus.
Really?
And they start praying out loud. It's an actual, you know, like different churches, you know, like black churches.
Yeah, in black church, they'll do it maybe one time at worship or something like that. But I don't think there's a necessarily, it's more of a victory shout. That happens a lot in the charismatic circles, like during praise and worship. Yeah. Like, let's give a victory shout. And so in Korean, I guess it would be the same theory.
Korean tradition, religion, they don't know where that started from, but a lot of people think it started from during the Japanese occupation, where Korean Christians were being occupied by Japan. Korean Christians just started screaming out Jesus during their prayer meetings for deliverance, and it became a part of our religious cultural expression. And then so in Korean churches, you'll see every time they do that, people just start weeping and crying and just praying in tongues and bugging out in a good way. Yeah. So as a youth pastor, I used to always do that.
Really?
My youth group, I'm like, here we go, y'all. And then everyone starts praying out loud.
Did you do that at Beloved?
I've done it once.
Did you?
I've done it once. It's just it's my heritage, you know? I've done it once. And I've done like walls of Jericho stuff, you know? Hey,
for sure.
We're going.
Yeah.
We're going. There's only one wall that's the hardest wall to break down. It's your heart. And sometimes we got to open our mouth to open space.
Yeah, that's what's interesting because, you know, well, you said the creator of Onsite was Christian, but the fact that
the owner, the current owner.
Okay. Yeah. Well, the fact though that in secular psychotherapy and other stuff that this is an understood practice, but you know, the science and the concept of counseling and therapy as we know it today is relatively new. It's less than 100 years old or whatever it is. But
the Bible has done all those things.
Yeah, that's what's incredible. You know, some things are odd, but other things, majority are not. Yeah. Majority are if you're just aware of, you know, our church history and Christian heritage. It's like a lot of that is, there was this stream that has always done this. I mean, like, even, you know, charismatic movement, for church stuff, like, you know, shouting and crying and screaming, and we label that as strange and weird because
I feel like all the people groups who were colonized and oppressed, we have a physical embodiment of our faith.
Trauma, for sure. Yeah,
you just got to get that out your body because generational trauma.
No,
you think about it, like all the oppressed, all the groups that have been oppressed, their Christian faith has an expression of like
has a very charismatic,
like an embodiment of your faith. While the ones who don't, they're just
It's very intellectual.
Yeah, it's very intellectual because you never have had to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyways, that's
it's like you have a trauma, but you have a different kind of trauma that comes with that. But yeah, dude, that is fascinating. You know, I never thought about it in that way.
You know, I'm sure I'll show you a quick the Korean Jesus call.
Yeah, I didn't know that. It makes sense.
I'm telling you about 100% of Korean churches do this.
Do they do it every Sunday?
They do it every prayer meeting for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
And every Korean Sunday service probably.
Yeah.
I can't find it.
Yeah, that's wild. You guys have it so secretive. No one's ever recorded it.
No, I think it's so common that you can't actually find it.
Yeah, because no one ever thinks it's unique, so no one ever thought. Yeah.
I'll find it sometime. I'll show you offline. Anyways,
dude, that's great. Yeah, that's incredible. Well, man, I'm glad you guys did that. I'm glad it was beneficial for you. That's awesome. Yeah. We'll see if I ever do something like that.
I don't think you'll do it. Maybe.
I'm not turned off by it. Like I said, it doesn't. I know anything would be beneficial that is beneficial for me. At first, but like the more you talk, I'm like, yeah, there might be some things there for my not for my children, but my emotions towards my children and wanting the burden of wanting to do it right with them.
Are we almost out of time?
Yeah, almost. Well, not. I mean, bro,
I'll get one thing that already I was like, whoa. Because one of the things we talk about is when you're a child, like 0 to 8, they say this, a child who is abused or neglected doesn't stop loving their parents, they stop loving themselves. Because a child doesn't have the mental capacity to not believe what their authoritative figure says is not true.
Yeah.
So if a parent says you're stupid, you don't have the mental capacity not to believe that's not true. And so what happens is your hatred goes inward and not outward, right? Even biblically speaking, I was thinking about when God says to Samuel, who does Samuel run to? He runs to Eli.
Yeah.
Because for him, the voice of God was synonymous to the voice of his authoritative figure.
Yeah.
So whenever Eli spoke, it was as if the voice of God spoke. So when a spiritual father or a parental figure speaks to you, is as if God, your identity is formed, right? And we don't realize that. So as a kid, when you're traumatized, you're helpless. So you just have to go through it. But what happens as an adult, you're like, now I have agency. Now I can protect myself. So your overreactions is an echoing of you wanting to protect that kid who couldn't protect himself because they didn't know how to. A simple thing that just happened a couple of days. My wife and I were like, you know what? We're not going to do technology no more for our kids, right? Which is huge because pastors, every day after school, they could watch TV for we have dinner together and they watch TV. And so one of the things our therapist talked about was kids are creative. They're all curious, you all explore, and they're all creative. And when you do certain things, it stunts their creativity. So we decided that. So I get home, I sit my kids down. We're like, hey, Monday through Thursday, just no TV. After school, we're gonna eat together and we're just gonna play. And then I told and I was so shocked. I told my daughter's the oldest, 6, right? I was like, today we're gonna play hide and seek. She just starts crying. She's 6 years old. And she runs and hugs me. She's like, Daddy, we haven't done this in so long. And she starts crying. I was like, why are you crying? She's like, I'm so happy. And I was so heartbroken because I was like, she didn't even
know she wanted it, needed it, and until you said it.
Yeah. So we played hide and go seek. I was dying for an hour and a half.
You're like, I need my phone.
I was like, and then yesterday we bought a bunch of freaking puzzles.
Yeah.
I was like, we're gonna do puzzles, and she cried again. And I was like, she doesn't even know how to articulate her needs. And so I need to. Anyways, and I was so those are the type of things.
That's powerful.
She literally 2 days in a row she cried.
Yeah.
Because I thought what she wanted was TV because she loves TV.
Right. Yeah.
But underneath she wanted connection with her dad.
Yeah.
And because I'm tired and we hang out all the time.
I'll sit on the couch on my phone while you're watching TV.
And that's the same thing with my wife.
Yeah.
My wife's like, I want connection.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want you to be on your phone and watching a TV show. And I'm like, I feel connected to you just fine.
I feel great. Yeah.
But she's like, no. Yeah. I don't feel connected to you.
Yeah.
Right? And then I'm like, oh. And then I'm learning, but at least she has the agency to say it. My kids don't. And so
and then it'll just be, it just continues to root more and more. And the older they get, they're going to get more and more isolated and quiet because they're thinking that's what my dad wants, either consciously or unconsciously.
Yeah, and they have no idea. And they won't know until they're in their 30s or 20s to articulate that. And that's where I'm going. Like, I'm unpacking that. So something as simple as that was so profound already when we got home. When I'm looking at my kids, I'm like, oh, I understand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure. I get, that's powerful. I get that. One of the things I've recognized as an adult, which is not good, and it's actually like Nancy's in here, who's my EA, and it's something we talk about all the time, which is I never want to inconvenience anyone, because I felt like growing up, we as kids were just inconvenienced to what my mom and dad were called to. Now, it's not true, and I'm old enough now. My parents, we talked about, people think when I talk about my parents and them falling short on the work side, like for some reason I'm like angry at them, or like me and my parents, we talk about this so much, like apologies have happened, we're we so much great relationship now, but like all I ever wanted to do was have my parents be like, Adam, what do you want to do today? And I feel like it never happened. It was, Adam, what do you want to do that's going to get you out of our hair? That's what it felt, which was like, you want to skateboard? Go get a skateboard and just don't come around until dinner, type of thing. That's what it felt like, right? Yeah. So I don't ever want to be an inconvenience to anyone.
As your friend, I feel that too.
Yeah. And so I'm always like, no, I got it. Don't worry about it. Hey, if you want, it's always my statement. Like, if you're okay with it, it's good. And I'm like, I'm a boss, not as like a boss person, but I'm literally a boss. Like I'm a leader. Like and I have the authority that I can quote unquote ask or demand of anything. And I actually don't want to. So Nancy will be like, hey, you're like, I'm looking at your schedule. Can I get you lunch? And I'm like, no, I can slip out and I can get it myself. She's like, hey, let me help you. Like, let me do this. Or even for Ashley, like, early on in marriage, I'm like, I'll do my own laundry, I'll do my own X. And at first, Ashley was like, no, I can help. But then it created such a habit of, she's like, well, you do take care of yourself, right? And because I don't want to be, what I want at the end of the day is people say, Adam didn't bother us. And to me, that's like, that's mentally a win.
I would say as your friend, if I was talking to you, that's your strength, and the shadow side would be because you don't want to inconvenience anyone else. You're probably working harder than everyone around you. Yeah. Which is a great trait, but over time,
it's impossible to, Which is my dad too. His version is the same, right?
Yeah. Oh, and they also say trauma is never again. I will never. That's anytime you say never, is trauma. And that never usually becomes the thing that breaks you later.
For sure. No, I see that. Yeah. I'm trying to, and that I try to get better. I try to like, so now more so with Nancy or even Ashley, I say yes, but I ask Ashley, can you pick up my dry cleaning? That like would have never been something I'd ask for because I think I could do it. She's going to, which even she could be annoyed, like what you're saying with Andrea, like Ashley could be annoyed by having to pick up my dry cleaning and also love me to do it. And I have to be okay with, I know it's annoying, but I need your help. And those two things can exist. I could be appreciative and also aware that I did inconvenience you. Where in the past, if she was like, oh, I had to get your dry cleaning, in my head, I'd say, well, then I'll never ask you to get my dry cleaning again. Because if it's that much of an inconvenience, I don't want to be that person.
And that's you protecting your pain.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'm not going to, well, I was going to choose a bad word. I'm aware. Well, I was going to say I'm fully aware of it, but obviously I am and I'm not at the same time. But as you're talking, it's like, oh, yeah, I totally get that the nevers and the how, everyone's personal upbringing can define. And so then I want to be, and then it flips and it's like, I want to overly reliant for my boys. Like, I don't want them to feel like you're a bother. So I'm like almost doing too much for them because I'm trying to, Dad's got you, like I'm going to be and then I have to trigger and be like, no, Matthias needs to do this on his own. He needs to,
I'd imagine if I was your guide or therapist as your homie. Yeah. You're going to want to be there for everyone. Yeah. You're going to want to be there for your kids, for your wife, for the church, for your friends, for the network,
Right.
But who's there for you? You know what I mean? And then how are you going to care for yourself?
Jesus.
But
for
you
sure.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then eventually, once you're holding 50 plates, some are going to start cracking.
And you're going to start...
And you're going to start feeling mad guilt.
Yeah.
And you're going to start feeling like, I can't do what I was never going to be that, but it's like...
Yeah, for sure.
And so those are the things...
No, it's great.
You've done your work, so...
It's great.
You're learning how to do that, but...
Yeah. I mean, you can learn how to do it at community college, or you can learn how to do it at Harvard.
For
I mean,
sure.
you know, it's
For
like,
sure.
you know, one's not better than the other. It's just one's at a certain level of expertise, and, you know, you can get to the root of it quicker and all that kind of stuff like that. And so, no, man. No, I think that's great. Thank you for sharing, bro. I know people benefit from these conversations because, you know, hopefully we're not giving advice. We're not giving, you know, psychology advice, pastoral, you know, anything.
No lawsuits.
Thankfully,
here,
we're covered under our religious practice, but
I'm not making any recommendations about anything.
No
I'm just telling you what I've been through.
You know, I just did. It's gonna air in a couple months, but I told you I just did Carrie Newhoff's, and we went into my ADHD. He was really fascinated on how I cope with it at a high level. And he asked, "Did you ever take medication?" And I said, first of all, this is not advice. And he's like, oh yeah, because Carrie's a lawyer. So he's like, oh yeah, this is not, we're not giving advice at all. And then I shared, like, I did for a season in college, and I didn't like the person I was. And so I stopped. But because I felt like it took away my wonder, you know, what made me special. But no, to that degree, it's like, this is not advice to be practiced on. Just two boys having a public conversation.
We haven't seen each other for like a month and a half.
We haven't, which is uncommon for us.
Yeah,
and you were down and out. We weren't even texting. So, you know, love you, bro. Thanks for being here today. Peace out, everybody.
Peace.